There were two people working for the New Orleans Public Works Department. One would dig a hole, and the other one would follow behind and fill the hole back in. They worked up one side of the street and down the next. Then they moved on to the next street, working furiously all day without rest. One man digging the hole, the other one filling it up. An onlooker was amazed at their hard work, but couldn't understand what in the world they were doing. So he said to the hole digger, "I'm really impressed by the effort you two are putting into your work, but I don't get it. You dig the hole just to have your partner follow behind and fill it up again." The hole digger wiped his brow and sighed, "Well, I suppose it looks odd, because we're normally a 3-person team. But today, the man who actually plants the trees called in sick." Now, there's a lot of food for thought that we can get from this story, but I personally related to it spiritually. I related to both workers. The one who dug the holes reminded me of the many, many years that I spent digging out the soil of my spiritual programming. I was raised Episcopalian, so I had to dig out all those old ideas, like reading the Bible literally, like thinking you weren't a Christian. If you weren't a Christian, you wouldn't go to heaven. I'm from Shreveport. And the whole idea of God as some anthropomorphic bearded being out there that we prayed to like Santa Claus. Give me this, give me that. Then, after digging out the soil of all of my old beliefs, I started filling up the hole again. I thought the soil was different, strange and exotic. In my mind, it ran the gamut from the beginning of my spiritual career with Ouija boards, of spiritualism, to all kinds of different religions and spiritual practices that seemed exciting and different. I've taught comparative religion for years, and you can imagine some of the ideas that I've filled my hole with. It took me a long, long time and a lot of study to realize that all the new soil that I was putting into the hole I dug was the same soil I had taken out. Just like in the story, they were all saying the same thing. And why not? Truth is truth. The metaphysical Bible, the Hindu Bhagavad Gita, the Buddhist sutras, Sufi poetry, they were all saying the same thing once I figured out what that was. But back to the story. What about the plant that the city workers were supposed to be placing in the holes they dug before they filled in the dirt again? And that brings us to today's lesson, practical metaphysics. The plants were the whole point of their efforts, but they missed it. They missed the point. They were doing pointless work without this step. That plant is the crucial part of any spiritual practice. It's not a lot of exotically named soil filling the hole that we've laboriously dug out. It's the reason for the hole and the soil. It's the most important part of our spiritual practice. It's not strange, it's not exotic, it's not difficult, and it's not otherworldly. It's not about escaping the world. It's not about escaping ourselves. There is nothing woo-woo about it. This plant is the everyday, minute-to-minute way we live our lives, the way we treat people, the way we treat God's world. The plant is about living. It's the most down-to-earth, simple, real thing in the world. How do we treat others? How do we treat ourselves? How do we treat our environment? If we don't love and have compassion for all beings, we need to do a little spiritual homework. We need to figure out what in us needs healing and then heal it so that we can live the life that all spiritual teachings speak of. What good does it do if we have replaced our fundamentalist religious dogma with something exotic, if we are still judgmental, unforgiving, and our egos direct most of our lives? What good does it do to amass vast spiritual learning and not love our neighbors as ourselves? Maybe all that learning keeps us entertained. Maybe it's good spiritual cocktail conversation. Maybe it makes us feel better than others. Trump Rinpoche called that spiritual materialism. And we must be careful not to do what Unity Minister Reverend Robert Brummett calls a spiritual bypass. That is, using spiritual practices to escape from the world instead of honestly looking at it and at ourselves. And that is what spiritual metaphysics, practical metaphysics, is all about. Using spiritual wisdom, the wisdom of the ages, and tools to look honestly at ourselves and the world that we have created and heal whatever is impeding our living lovingly, joyfully, compassionately, and healthily at all times. All spiritual teachings, whether they're fancy from Tibet and India or homespun as the most simplistic fundamental reading of the Christian Bible, tell us that the plant we should place in the hole we dig is the sprout of a brand new life. If this life is consistent with the eternal wisdom, free of our worldly ways, it will flower and it will grow and it will bring beauty to us and all those around us. In Milan, Italy, a city known for its art, there is an impressive cathedral that has some significant words inscribed around its entrance. To the right of the door is a sculptured wreath of roses, and underneath it says, "All that pleases us is only for a moment." On the left is a sculptured cross of thorns with these words beneath, "All that troubles us is only for a moment." Over the top are the words, "Nothing is important but that which is eternal." We need to learn and align ourselves with those eternal values, that eternal wisdom, and let the worldly ones go so we can blossom into who we really are. Worldly values come and go with different cultures and ages and places, but the eternal values endure. That's reality. Most of us grow up and are programmed to think that worldly values make us happy, but they never do in and of themselves. In fact, even when we attain worldly goals, we generally will feel fear and vulnerability about losing them unless we are aligned with what is really important in life. And that's what I'd like us to concentrate on as we continue to kick off 2019. We Saints fans know that kickoffs are important, right? Jesus said, "I came not to send peace, but a sword." He meant that he wasn't going to teach complacency. He didn't teach that everything is perfect and lovely and wonderful just the way it is. Buddha didn't tell people that they weren't suffering. His first noble truth says life is suffering. What unity and all spiritual teachings are saying is that there is a possibility of our living abundantly and wonderfully because that is the underlying truth of all things. But we must do our part. We must own up to what we are thinking and doing and change our level of consciousness so that we can start living better. And it's not that hard. There's some very complex, metaphysical, esoteric teachings that you can study out there. I know all of us in here have studied a lot of them. One sometimes has to travel the world to learn some of them. But the truth is, they are fundamentally simple and practical. I used to think that wisdom had to have an exotic foreign wrapper. I now know that it's all about how to live a good, loving, joyful life of integrity, of peace, and fulfillment. Today, I packaged these metaphysical truths into 8 very practical wrappers. I'm really on this number 8 these days. You can fancy them up later if you want. They represent the heart, the very heart of people of the book, the Bible, the Judaic, Christian, Muslim Bible, and a lot of complex Buddhist sutras and Hindu psychology. But they are simple. They are down-to-earth verities that unity has taught for over 100 years. First, we need to reach a level of understanding of what's possible before we can attain it. Jesus said, "Unto him that hath, it shall be given." Jesus was telling us that we have to develop ourselves to a certain level in order to be able to see, to be given, so to speak, these higher levels. We must know that there is a next rung to the spiritual ladder before we will bother to reach for that rung and then let go of the level we're hanging on to below. The truth is that we can all live happy, peaceful, loving, bountiful lives. Second, we need to really understand and internalize that our thinking creates our lives. Our thinking creates our whole world out there, as we so often say in Unity. We interpret everything out there and everyone according to our beliefs. The Apostle Paul said to the Romans, "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." Buddha said in the Four Noble Truths that we suffer, but that the cause of suffering is the way we think, and that the end of suffering is to change our thinking. All spiritual teachings say the same thing. There is no other way to end suffering and to manifest abundance than to change our minds. It's really up to us. 3, then once we have accepted that we create our world, we can quit blaming others and outer events for our state of mind or our lives. We simply watch what others do and say and how it affects us, and we work on healing those wounds that cause us to be bothered by them or to suffer because of them. Think about it. We're all like holograms. Everyone we see is in us. And if we don't like them, we need to see the part of them that is in us that we don't like and heal them. We're all part of each other. Whatever is in one hologram is in us and all those holograms. Or maybe the guy pulls out in front of us in traffic one day. We can curse him and we can stay angry all day. We can categorize him into a certain group of people and get negative about the whole group. Women drivers, drunk drivers, octogenarian drivers, narcissistic millennials, entitled yuppies. We got a lot of them. Or we can look a little deeper at maybe why we are so threatened by losing control in traffic. We use the observation of our anger for information so that we can get free of our source of anger. Fourth, We must start replacing our limiting thoughts with healthy ones. Affirmations are in order here. We must unprogram our unconscious, delete thoughts of doubt, hopelessness, and negativity. Pray to see things differently. The point is to start being present to our limiting thoughts so that we can let them go. You gotta know they're there before you can let them go. We aren't our thoughts. They are simply energy patterns that appear due to various circumstances and programming, maybe certain brain chemistry, whatever. Thoughts shouldn't be believed. They should be observed. Great guru in unity, Eric Butterworth, often said that we are where we are in life due to our thinking, and that we can change that thinking, and we then will change our lives. He often talked about how most of us resist the fact that we have created our world. If we're willing to take responsibility for our thoughts, we can change all of our experiences. Unity says we aren't what happens to us, we're what we do when it happens. To change our thoughts, we need to hold in mind the thoughts that we do want, of course. For example, visualize yourself as healthy and whole. You visualize yourself doing whatever you want for your job. You picture yourself not bothered by what others say and do. You practice being grateful for all that you have, and you are grateful ahead of time, very important, ahead of time for all the good that is going to come into your life. 5, a fifth way to live a better life is to meditate. Crucially important. This is when we actually suspend our thinking entirely and give ourselves some moments free of programming and thoughts. Eckhart Tolle tells us not to be able to stop thinking is a dreadful affliction, but we don't realize this because almost everybody is suffering from it. So it's considered normal. Mass psychosis, the French call it. This incessant mental noise prevents you from finding that realm of inner stillness, he says, that is inseparable from our true being. There are many ways to meditate, of course, but doing it is what is important. It's the main time for most people when they get some relief from the constant barrage of earthly values and programming and thoughts. It's that time when we can become as little children, as the Bible says, open and receptive to truth. Unity co-founder called it accessing the silence, which he did for at least an hour every evening. It's that time, meditating, when we can see our ego-dominated selves and at the same time see what's real. You will start seeing that the people and situations that bother you are just your gurus. They're your teachers because they show us where we still have work to do. We might even start being grateful for them. 6, another very practical metaphysical law is to give to others. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Mother Teresa once said, "It's Christmas every time you let God love others through you." Give others your attention. Give others your time. Listen to them. As the poet Hafiz said, everyone is God speaking. Why not be polite and listen to him? Giving is tithing of yourself. Sometimes a kind word or smile makes someone's whole day. It might even keep them alive. we can all give more, and it creates a feeling of abundance in our lives. The next practical metaphysical tool is prayer. This is when you plug in to your source. By seeding your ego self, you allow your higher self to operate in your life. When you are connected to God through prayer, it changes you. And it changes your world because you start seeing your world very differently with Christ's vision. True prayer is saying, not my will, but thine. True prayer is asking to see the world differently, as God would with Christ's vision. When we pray truly, we don't need to ask for anything specifically because we realize we have it all. This is a very high spiritual truth. Simple, but true. Most of us pray for specific things that our egos deem important, but this is not the highest form of prayer. The highest form is to ask God to help us become one with the life force so that we can manifest this force in our lives all the time. And when your life throws you a curveball, you'll know how to deal with it on the spot. In Romans 12:2, our Bible states, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Prayer helps you be in the world on a high level, but not of it. In lesson 127, in the Course of Miracles, it says, and I quote, no law the world obeys can help you grasp love's meaning. Seek not within the world to find yourself. Practice freeing your mind of all the laws you think you must obey, of all the limits under which you live. The world that seems to hold you prisoner can be escaped by anyone who does not hold it dear. Withdraw all value you have placed upon its meager offerings and senseless gifts, and let the gift of God replace them all. Let us give thanks today that we are spared a future like the past. Today we leave the past behind us. A new world is born, and we shall watch it grow in health and in strength, to shed its blessings upon all who cast aside the world they thought was real. End of quote. And it goes on in the next lesson to say, the world we know we will leave behind so we can soar beyond its petty scope and little ways. Each thing you value here in this world is but a chain that binds you to the world, which offers nothing. Practice letting go of all thoughts of values we have given to the world. We thus lift the chains that bar the door to our freedom and go beyond all the little values and diminished goals and rise far above the world. You fly to your real home. And I might add that when you do this, when you let go of worldly values, you will be firmly fixed and on solid ground in the real world, the eternal wisdom world. In closing, there's nothing wrong with playing the game of life and acquiring some of the Monopoly game payoffs. That's fun. But we must stay aware that the game we're playing isn't reality. The properties we buy and sell with Monopoly money aren't real. The eternal values are. They always have been, they always will be. The simplicity of reality is living a loving, caring, peaceful life, realizing that every single person is a manifestation of God, and that we are all one. So as we get started in 2019, let's get very practical about some very deep spiritual truths. Let us realize our oneness with each other, with all of life. Let us learn from life as it presents itself. Let us start to carefully discern the eternal truths and let superficial ones go. We can then live true prosperity, peace, love, happiness, and unity. This is the flower that we must plant in that hole. It is the highest truth there is. And it is simple and it is practical. And you deserve to enjoy its magnificence and beauty in your life. Happy 2019 again.